I'm going to present our project FDVT, Personal Data Valuation Tool for Facebook User. This work is being developed in the University Carlos III from Madrid, and the team working in this project is from my two students, José González and Raquel Aparicio, that unfortunately couldn't come, and two faculty, Rubén Cuevas, my twin brother, who is around there in the audience, and myself, Ángel Cuevas. So this project starts from a question that is gaining attention nowadays. What is the value of your personal information? And we can find different initiatives requesting tools that try to answer this question. So for instance, the Data Transparency Lab, and that's why we got the grant, has one item in the call for grants that requests tools that measure the value of personal information. Also, the European Union, in the H2020 program, which is the program funding research project in Europe, was asking tools that allow average user to understand what is the economical value associated to their personal information. So our goal was trying to put some light into this problem. However, this question is kind of complex and broad, and we wanted to do something more concrete. And we posed the following question to ourselves. Can we create a tool that measures the value a user is generating while browsing in the internet? Still, this is quite complex in the sense that the online advertising market is very complex, and we wanted to do something even more simple. That's why the final question we want to answer with the FDVT is what is the money you are generating for Facebook. Why we have chosen Facebook is because it's a very popular system that in which hundreds of thousands of users are active every day. And also, Facebook summarizes quite well the online advertising ecosystem into a single system. The final goal of this tool is to create awareness among average users regarding the value of their personal information. So once we know the question we want to answer with our tool, we want to set up from the very beginning very clear what are the requirements we want to achieve. Okay, thank you. Okay. So first of all, the FDVT is a tool for average user. So basically, I want my mother being able to use this tool. And this is the very first requirement. Therefore, we require it to be easy to install. What we have done is developing the FDVT as a web browser add-on that appears just in the right corner of the browser. In addition, it needs to be easy to use. What means easy to use? That with a simple click, the user should be able to retrieve the economic value associated to his or her activity in Facebook. Also, we want to provide anonymity to the end user. What that means that even ourselves, as the owner of the FDVT, shouldn't be able to recognize the identity of the user using the tool. For that, what we are doing is simply using a hash over the Facebook ID of the user. And as you will see later, we are not using many information, so it will be difficult to correlate the data in our data set with the actual identity of a user. And finally, and very important, is that we are aware that we cannot provide 100% accurate value to end user. Why? We are not Facebook, and we really don't know what is the actual price that an advertiser is paying at a given moment for showing an ad to a user or for gathering a click from the user. Still, the goal is creating awareness among the end user, and we think we can do a pretty good job with this tool towards completing this goal. I'm going to introduce briefly how the solution works. So the FDVT is composed by two parts, a central server, a backend, in which we will be storing the information regarding the information sent by the plugin to our backend, and a front end, which is the plugin itself. How this works? Basically, the user installs the plugin, and every time it opens a session in Facebook, the plugin makes a request to the ads planner in order to retrieve the CPM and CPC values associated to the audience or audiences matching the user profile. And we construct the user profile with very few information items that we request to the user in the registration process. Once we know the CPM and CPC values for that user, what the plugin does is monitor the activity of the user in the Facebook wall. And we do something very simple. We account the number of ads that are displayed to the user and the number of times the user clicks through one of these ads. And how we account the economical value associated to this action. For each ad display, we count the CPM divided by 1,000. For each click the user performed, we count the CPC. After all this information, I forgot to say that we will be showing this accumulated information in real time during the session, and we will transfer all this information to the backend once the session has been completed. So far, in the 2.5 months we have been working this project, we have put our energy on designing and on implementing the backend, the front end, and we have developed the plugin for Google Chrome. So now I'm going to show you a quick video that is showing the functionality, how the plugin works. So let me see. Let me start it. I don't know if you can see it. So when the user first installs the plugin and wants to use it, it's redirected to a registration process. As you can see there, we are asking the user only 4 information items so far. Why? Because we don't want to be very intrusive. So we are asking the location, the gender, the age, and the relationship status. And among these 4 parameters, the only which is compulsory is the location. Why? Because the Facebook Ads Manager requests you to provide at least the location for one audience in order to obtain the CPM and CPC values. So once the user fills all this information, we'll need to accept some terms of conditions that are still to be defined, and the user will be ready to use the tool. So as you are seeing here, usually the ads are displayed either on the right side of the wall, and as we will see, the user in the video, the user scrolls down, and at some point, a new suggested post appears in the wall. Here you are. So we have, right now the user has visualized 3 ads, and we will perform another action that is clicking through one of these ads. And at this point, what we have is that the user has visualized 3 ads and has clicked through one of the ads. Then, if the user clicks on the FDVT plugin, we show very simple information. Remind that this is for average user. So we are showing him or her the number of ads she or he has visualized in the session ads line, the number of ads he or she has clicked through in the ads clicked, and in the bottom part we are showing the economic value associated to this action. So in this session line, we are showing the user the accumulated value he has generated, and we split also this value into the value generated due to the numbers of ads he has visualized and the number of ads he or she has clicked through. Okay, so this is a very simple demonstration. Actually, it looks a bit better now, and if some of you is interested, I can show you a live demo offline of the tool working. Okay, so let's go to the slide. Can you? Okay.
Yeah, you got it.
Okay. So I will go now through some technical details we have addressed so far. The first question is, who should be making the queries in order to obtain the CPC and CPM values for each user? We thought initially to make this from the central server, but actually due to load balancing reason and especially due to fault tolerance, we decided that is the plugin from the end user premises, the one making the queries. Why fault tolerance? Because right now, even if the backend fails, the user will still be able to enjoy the full functionality of our solution and access to the information. What information we are using for providing the end user with economical value? You should know that when you query the Facebook Ad Planner, the Facebook Ad Planner for a given audience is giving you the minimum, median, and maximum values for that audience at this time. But we are only using the CPM, the median value, because we don't want to make the life of the user complex, explaining him or her many things. The following question we wanted to address is how frequently we should query the Ads Planner to retrieve the CPM and CPC values. Why? Because a Facebook session could last a very long time, and then the CPM and CPC values associated to the audiences of the user could change over time. What we have done is a very simple experiment. We have taken many audiences, around 20. What you have on the top, this experiment is for the CPM. What you have on the 4 figures on the top are showing the CPM variation over time for 4 different audiences in 4 different countries, and basically just illustrate that the CPM is changing over time. And change different for different audiences. So what we have done later is dividing the time into buckets of seconds, minutes, hours, and so on. Within each of these buckets, we have measured the maximum variability of the CPM. And what we are showing in the figure there is the distribution of the variability in each bucket for a large number of samples in the form of a box plot. What we are showing there is that it doesn't make sense to query the ads planner every second or every 10 seconds or even every minute. Why? Because the variability of the CPM value is very low. In the case of 1 minute, in very, very rare cases, it goes above 1%. However, in the case of 10 minutes, for few cases, but still a relevant number of cases, the variability goes above 5%. So we thought this is a good trade-off between the load you generate by making the queries and the variability you can achieve. I'm illustrating here the CPM because the CPC is showing even a lower variability. Finally, a very interesting question is that a user actually matches different audiences. So if you have n parameters, here you have the mathematical formulation for understanding how many audiences match the profile of a user, given that this user has n parameters. But what is relevant for what I'm presenting today is the box below that is referring to the 4 parameters we are requesting to the user right now. Assuming that the location is something compulsory and is fixed, we have combined the other 3 parameters together, and we can create up to 7 audiences. So one straightforward solution, and probably will be implementing that, is requesting the CPM and CPC values for these 7 audiences, and somehow averaging them and use these CPM and CPC values. But actually, we want to do something a bit more sophisticated here, in the sense that some of these parameters generate value over what we call the baseline. What is the baseline? It's the price of the user due to his country, which is the basic information you need to gather the CPM and CPC values. But what are the parameters for particular ages and particular location that generate value over this baseline, and what are the parameters that generate value below this baseline? I'm sorry, because I think the X and Y axes are not very clear. But anyway, I'm bringing here a very simple example in which I want to illustrate this. So we have 2 snapshots of United Kingdom and France. In the Y-axis, we are representing many parameters. In the X-axis, we are representing the age of the user. So each cell is representing, for that parameter and that age, whether this parameter is generating value over the baseline, so the nationality of this country, or is creating less value than the baseline value. So as we move from green to blue to gray, this cell is generating more value over the baseline. As we move to yellow, orange, and red, this cell is generating less value over with respect to the baseline. So for instance, if we compare in terms of ages United Kingdom and France, the ages generating more value in France ranges between 35 and 45 years old, while in United Kingdom this is happening but for ages between 45 and 55 years old. If we look into females, in the case of France, you see more yellow and more red, and in general it seems that women generate more value in UK than in France. If we think of marriage, which is one of the civil status, which is the relationship status, one of the parameters we are collecting right now, the marriage is actually, the fact that you are married is generating value in both countries, but in the case of UK, they generate value for ages over 40, while in the case of France, this is generating value for ages between 25 and 45 years old. I mean, don't take this like a real truth in the sense that these are only 2 snapshots, and what we are doing right now is collecting over 30,000 audiences every day for more than 90 countries. And we want to analyze all this stuff and see whether it is stable over time, whether this is changes, and understand for each country what are the parameters that really are adding value or removing value from the baseline. And with this, once we understand this, we will be able to provide, the results of this research can provide input to the FDVT to understand what are the right parameters we need to use in the different audiences. So just to conclude my talk, I want to tell what are the next steps we are doing right now. So we are implementing the FDVT in other browsers. In particular, we are implementing it right now in Firefox. We are also implementing the backend. I didn't talk about this, but we want to do research with all the data we collect in order to understand what is the behavior of the users and whether they are gathering this awareness or not. And once these two steps are completed, we'll be requesting beta tester, and I'll be very happy to distribute our plugin among many of you, so you can provide us feedback in order to make this solution better and launch it publicly as soon as possible in order to complete the final goal. So if you are interested, here we have a website, and we'll be updating the information of this project. So thank you very much for your time, and I'll be happy to take your questions.
Thanks. Okay, what are your questions? Yes.
Yeah, just, another big area of advertising is, is Google search advertising. Maybe you mentioned it. Sorry. Do you have a plan to also do this for that form of advertising?
Actually, this is something we have in mind, for instance, to do it also, to extend it to Google Search and other big players that are providing you information about CPM and CPC values for a well-defined audiences. So at the end of the day, what we need is information about a well-defined audience so we can infer the parameters of the user and give him or her this information. So that's exactly what we are thinking to do in the following steps.
More questions? Yes, over here. Yes, please. You can start.
I'm just curious, are you trying to quantify the value of a user to Facebook or the value of a user's data to Facebook?
Actually, it's the value of the audience, of the value that this audience is generating for Facebook. So a user can fit different audiences due to his personal information. So I'm from Spain, I'm 34 years old, and because of that, I'm generating some value for, I'm fitting some audiences that are more popular or more expensive for advertisers. So this is what, at the end of the day, we want to inform the user. I mean, this is an estimation. This is what we can tell you are generating for Facebook. So you understand what is somehow the value of your information, obviously aggregated. We are not telling you your age costs this, or your, I don't know, your gender costs that.
Maybe this relates to the slides where, what the value you make is right here measured as how much value you make by advertisement. There are other values. Maybe Facebook would be able to make interesting. Well, okay, but we can solve.
So if you're trying to quantify the value of the individual to Facebook, are you also looking at some way? Because I don't think you would claim that the number that's going to come out here is the actual number that Facebook. Right?
No, we say
but
that.
I think it's a very good representation that's probably proportional to what Facebook actually makes per user. So are you looking at any way to sort of estimate the gross revenue of Facebook and what Facebook's gross revenue would be without the data that they have in the system? Because they still have a ton of attention, which is also a way to a certain amount of monetization. And then normalize the values that you're getting from here with some absolute value that gives you, that puts it all sort of in context of what the range of motion for earnings of Facebook would be.
I mean, that's a pretty good question. The point is we still didn't gather the data from the user itself, so we cannot do that step, but obviously we are planning to try to answer all these questions once we launch it publicly and we hopefully get many users gathering, giving us information, so we can answer this kind of question and try to figure out what is the average value and whether this matches the actual revenue Facebook is advertising due to the advertisement they are doing. So obviously we plan to do all this research, but this comes after we really have gathered users.
Maybe one, Paul mentioned Google as another example.
Yeah.
Most of the revenue of Google comes from advertising. I mean, the percentage is humongous. So if you know how much they make per advertising on you, you have a pretty good idea of.
Yeah, and actually we.
Yeah, but how would you know that without knowing the total number of users? The total number of users,
sure,
how much they make divided by the total number of users, and then what my variation is from the mean, right? So I think
that's another question. Yes.
And then if you look at the total number of users, and you could say for somebody, if the average person is $5 a month, I think is for Facebook, and you are this far above the mean, then you're going to be $17.5 or something.
But at the end, it's depends. We'll take it offline.
That's a very good point, yes.
So I was going to ask a follow-up question, but I think we've almost covered it. But maybe looking at Facebook's actual public quarterly reports and everything will give you a bunch of data that you can use to then cross-correlate with your thing to work out how close your estimate is. And then is your value above or below what's needed to make Facebook break even?
Yeah, I mean, at the end, what I said, what we are expecting is gathering many users, and when we have this big sample, all these questions we can answer because we can figure out average values and whether you are above the average, whether you are not above the average, and at the end of the day, we already know things like, for instance, the fact that you are American, or the fact that you are American roughly gives you twice the price that if you are Spanish, just by the fact of doing that. That if you are Spanish, twice the price if you are from Bangladesh. These kind of things are there. So obviously, the more users we gather and the more information we have, the better we'll be able to answer or to address all these questions in our research.